Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can open the door to a life we never expected. In the quiet corners of small-town America, where people still nod to each other on sidewalks and remember birthdays by heart, one woman's choice to return a lost wallet will lead her on a journey she never imagined, toward healing, music, and a friendship that would change everything. This is the story of Grace Winslow, and the wallet that brought her back to life. A quiet grocery store parking lot in a small American town. Autumn leaves gently swirl across the asphalt. The air is crisp, golden light spilling over faded storefronts. The gentle hum of distant traffic blends with birdsong. Grace Winslow wasn't in a hurry that Thursday morning. At 66, her days had taken on a slower rhythm. There was no clock chasing her now. No lunches to pack, no office to get to. Just the simple comfort of routine. A soft morning light through her kitchen window, a pot of black tea steeped just right, and the rustle of the local paper as she circled things she didn't really need from the grocery flyer. Grace walking through the parking lot, a reusable canvas bag in hand. She walks with care, a slight limp in her step from an old knee injury. She liked this time of day, when the store was quiet and familiar faces nodded hello. When the bakery still smelled of warm sourdough and cinnamon muffins. That's when she saw it. Wallet. It was lying there, just outside the driver's door of a dusty blue sedan, its leather worn smooth with age. She bent slowly to pick it up, brushing away a few dry leaves that clung to it. Grace to herself. Someone's day's gonna turn upside down without this. She turned it over gently in her hands. No flashy design. Just a plain brown bifold. She opened it carefully, looking for a name. Inside was a stack of old bills, 20s mostly, a few faded photos, and a driver's license. Grace reading softly. Walter Keane. 1940. She pauses. 85. Grace's brow furrowed. She looked around the parking lot. No one nearby. The sedan it had fallen beside was empty, the window just slightly cracked. Might be his. She hesitated. She could leave it with customer service. But something told her, no. This wallet had stories in it. Had seen years, maybe decades. She didn't want it tossed into a bin or behind some counter, forgotten until someone else found it and wasn't quite as honest. So she did what her mother had taught her when she was a girl in Sunday school. Do the next right thing. Grace entering the store. She walks to the front counter. Grace to the clerk. Hi, sweetheart. I found this out in the parking lot, and I think it might belong to someone named Walter Keane. Could I maybe leave my number in case he comes back looking for it? Young clerk, surprised, friendly. Sure, ma'am. I think Mr. Keane shops here pretty regularly, actually. He lives a few blocks down. Comes in on Thursdays for bread and apples. I've rung him up before. Grace. Well, if he stops in, tell him Grace Winslow has his wallet safe at home. I'm in the phone book. She smiled as she left the store, the wallet tucked carefully in her bag. Grace didn't know it yet, but the moment she picked up that wallet, the quiet rhythm of her days had begun to shift. The man who lost it had been waiting for something, or perhaps someone, for a long, long time. And Grace, though she didn't know it either, had been waiting just as long, for a reason to feel needed again. Grace's small, cozy home. Floral curtains, framed family photos, a kettle steaming gently in the kitchen. A dog-eared book sits open on the side table. Back home, Grace placed the wallet gently on her dining table. She set out a small pad of paper beside it, scribbling a note just in case Walter knocked. Walter, found your wallet near your car. Give me a ring or stop by any time. Grace W. She placed the note in the window facing the street. Grace sits by the window, sipping her tea, gazing out with the patience of someone who has learned the art of waiting. She didn't know why, but her heart felt a little lighter. A little more awake. Like she'd just turned a page she hadn't known was stuck. Later that evening, a knock on the door. Soft and hesitant. Grace opens the door slowly. Standing there is an elderly man. Thin, tall, with deep-set eyes and neatly combed silver hair. His clothes are simple but tidy. He holds his hat in his hand. Walter Keene. Ma'am. I believe you have something of mine. Grace, smiling warmly. Mr. Keene. You must be. Come on in, I've been waiting on you. Walter stepped into her home like a man entering a memory. The warmth, the smell of chamomile and honey, the ticking of an old mantel clock, it all felt familiar in a way he couldn't quite explain. He took the wallet with both hands, like he was holding more than just a possession. His voice cracked softly. Walter. I didn't think I'd see this again. Most folks would have just kept it. Grace. Well, I'm not most folks. They both smile. A silence passes. Not uncomfortable, but full of meaning. Walter, looking down at the wallet. There's a photo in there, my Lillian. She passed 10 years ago this spring. Keep her picture with me. Always. Grace softly. She's lovely. I saw her photo. You two must have had a beautiful life. Walter, after a pause. Not long enough. But yes, it was beautiful. They sat for a while, sipping tea, two strangers linked not just by a wallet, but by a shared quiet, the kind that comes after a long life lived with both joy and loss. Grace told him she'd lived alone since her husband Henry passed 7 years ago. That the days were long but not always lonely, just quiet. Walter nodded. He understood. Walter. Funny, isn't it? You can be surrounded by things, books, clocks, birds out the window, and still feel like you're waiting on something. Grace, smiling faintly. Maybe we're both still waiting. Or maybe this is what we were waiting for. That night, Walter left with his wallet and a fresh jar of Grace's homemade blackberry jam. Grace watched him walk down the sidewalk, her porch light glowing like a promise. She didn't know then that he'd be back in just 2 days. Not because he lost anything else, but because he had something he wanted to give. Something precious. Something Grace never expected. Morning light spills across Grace's kitchen table. Steam rises from a teacup, and a small radio hums with an old Nat King Cole tune. The soft clink of a spoon stirring honey blends with birdsong outside. 2 days passed since Grace Winslow returned Walter Keene's wallet. She didn't expect anything in return. That wasn't her way. But something about that visit had stirred her spirit, like the feeling when a song you forgot you loved comes floating through the air again. She found herself humming more, smiling more. And when Saturday morning came, she noticed herself keeping an extra teacup out. Just in case. A knock at the door. Grace rises slowly, her robe tied around her waist, slippers padding softly on the floor. She opens the door. Walter, gentle, hopeful. Morning, Miss Winslow. I hope I'm not intruding. Grace, smiling, genuinely glad. Not at all. I've got the kettle on and cinnamon rolls in the oven. You timed it just right. Walter smiled, the kind of smile that comes from being invited, not out of politeness, but from being truly wanted. He stepped inside, removing his hat, brushing a few silver hairs back into place. Grace and Walter sit across from one another at the table. The light is soft, golden. Between them is a small box, wooden, old, and carefully polished. Walter, resting his hand on the box. Grace, I didn't just come by for breakfast. I've been thinking. You did a kind thing for me. More than kind. You gave me back something I hadn't felt in a long time. Trust. And I wanted to give something back to you. Grace, touched but modest. Oh, now, Walter. You don't owe me anything. A person ought to return what isn't theirs. That's just good sense. Walter, softly. It's not about owing. It's about sharing. This belonged to Lillian. He opened the box slowly, revealing a bundle of carefully folded sheet music, aged yellow with time. Beneath it, nestled in velvet, lay a silver locket, and a faded letter tied with blue ribbon. Grace, barely above a whisper. Oh my. Walter. Walter. She used to write letters to herself, you know. Lillian always said the piano gave her a voice when words wouldn't come. This one she wrote just before she got sick. I never shared it with anyone. Not even my boys back when they were still around. But something about you. I think she'd want you to read it. Grace humbled, unsure. I wouldn't feel right. This is something sacred. Walter gently. You remind me of her. The way you carry yourself. The way you see people. Go ahead. If you'd like. Grace opens the letter, hands trembling slightly. Her voice is soft as she reads aloud. The narration gently transitions into Lillian's voice, a tender southern lilt. Lillian voiceover. Reading from the letter. To the woman I'll never meet. If you're holding this letter, then you found your way into Walter's heart, a quiet, gentle place he doesn't open easily. Thank you for being kind to him. For seeing the good in his eyes and sitting across from him with warmth in your voice. We never had a daughter. I used to imagine what she might be like. Strong, thoughtful, with a laugh that comes from deep in her belly. Maybe she'd love music like I did. Maybe not. But whoever you are, I hope you still believe in wonder. In the small miracles. Like the way two people can sit across a table and find comfort in each other's silence. If Walter's offering you this letter, then he's offering more than words. He's offering memory, music, and the last echo of a woman who loved him more than sunlight. Be kind to him. And let him be kind to you. Love. Lillian keen. Slow and emotional, with the weight of the moment. Grace folded the letter back slowly, her eyes glistening. It felt like someone had reached across time and handed her a piece of their soul. Grace whispering. She sounds like she was beautiful, inside and out. Walter nodding. She was music. Everything she touched turned to harmony. And now, I'd like to offer you something, Grace. I haven't taught in years, but I still have the old upright piano. And something tells me, you always wanted to play. Grace, startled, tears welling. I did, when I was a girl, but there was never money for lessons. I used to press the keys at the library piano and pretend I knew what I was doing. Walter, smiling gently. Well then, what do you say we make up for lost time? Grace nods, overwhelmed, covering her mouth with her hand. The moment is quiet, profound. That morning something changed. Not just between two people but within them. Grace hadn't just returned a wallet. She'd been entrusted with a legacy. And in Walter, she found not just a companion, but the key to something buried deep in her spirit. Music, memory, and healing. Sometimes the heart opens. Not with a bang but with a whisper. Letter. Locket. A long-lost dream rekindled in the autumn of life. Grace was about to learn that it's never too late to play your song. Scene, a crisp Sunday afternoon. A light breeze carries the scent of turning leaves. Grace walks slowly down Elm Street, her hands tucked into her sweater pockets. The town is quiet, with only the occasional bark of a dog or crunch of footsteps against fallen leaves. It had been many years since Grace Winslow had walked this far down Elm Street. The houses all looked the same. Small porches, wind chimes swaying lazily, the faint sound of an AM radio behind someone's screen door. But today, she wasn't out for groceries or a walk to stretch her joints. Today, she was going to learn something she had only dreamed of. She was going to learn the piano. Scene. Walter's home. A modest one-story with blue shutters, a tidy garden, and a welcome mat that had lost some of its letters. Grace stands at the doorstep, takes a breath, and knocks. Door opens. Walter smiles warmly, wearing a cozy cardigan and corduroy slacks. Walter, you came. I was beginning to think you might get cold feet. Grace, laughing nervously. Oh, I did. About 3 times on the walk here. But something kept pushing me forward. Walter, stepping aside. Well, I'm glad it did. Come on in. The kettle's on, and the piano's been waiting a long time. Scene. Inside Walter's home, a warm lived-in space. Family pictures, framed sheet music, and the comforting scent of lemon oil and old books. In the den, an upright piano sits beneath a window, covered in a crocheted cloth, polished to a soft sheen. The piano stood like a quiet witness, full of memory and music, touched by 100 melodies that once filled this home. Grace walked to it slowly, her hand brushing across the wood. It hummed beneath her fingers like a living thing. Grace whispering. She really played here. Walter from behind her. Every day, rain or shine. That's Lillian's bench. I never moved it. Grace sitting gently. It feels sacred. Walter smiling softly. Music is sacred. That's why it stays with you, long after the notes are gone. Scene. Walter pulls up a small chair beside her, placing a thin, worn book of beginner exercises on the stand. The pages are yellowed, corners dog-eared. Walter. Now, let's start at the beginning. You ever learned the notes? Grace, shaking her head. No, sir. Only what my ears could pick up. I used to pretend I was playing along with the radio, but I never learned the names of things. Walter chuckling. Well, that's more than most. Here, middle C. Let's find it. Scene. Grace places her fingers on the keys, hesitant at first. Walter gently guides her hand, not pressing, just pointing. The notes were hesitant, soft and unsure, but they were hers. One by one, Grace tapped the keys. Each sound was a step, not just into music but into a new part of herself. A room she hadn't opened in decades. Grace, after a few tries. It's harder than it looks. My fingers don't move like they used to. Walter, smiling kindly. They will. Music lives in the bones. The fingers will remember what the heart already knows. After an hour of practicing simple scales, they take a break. Walter pours 2 mugs of tea. They sit at the small table near the window. Grace looking outside. I can't tell you what this means to me, Walter. Feel like a child again. Not in a silly way. Just alive. Walter nodding. That's what music does. It makes us feel seen, even when we're all alone. Lillian used to say it was the language of the soul, that the notes said what we were too proud or too scared to say aloud. Grace thoughtfully. She sounds like someone I would have liked very much. Walter quietly. She would have loved you, Grace. That afternoon, the piano was played again. Slowly, gently. It didn't matter that Grace stumbled through the scales or missed half the keys. What mattered was that something had awakened. And Walter, watching her from the corner of the room, saw it. The way her eyes lit up, the way her breath caught when she played a full measure correctly. She wasn't just learning to play. She was remembering who she was before life made her forget. Grace stands by the door ready to leave, holding a small folder of practice sheets Walter copied for her. Walter. Same time next week. Grace grinning. I'll bring banana bread if you make the tea. Walter tipping his imaginary hat. Deal. Grace, hesitating before leaving. Walter, why me? Why share all this with me? Walter, after a long pause. Because kindness like yours doesn't come around often. And because some music is meant to be passed on. You were meant to find that wallet, Grace. And I was meant to find you. Fading to twilight as Grace walks home, the folder clutched to her chest like a treasure. That night, Grace set the practice sheets beside her reading lamp and opened the windows just a little wider. She listened to the night, to the wind through the trees, to the whistle of a train far off in the valley. And somewhere in that quiet she heard music. Not from a radio, not from the piano, but from inside herself, a soft, steady rhythm of hope returning. Scene. Grace's home late evening. A small lamp casts a golden glow over the living room. A practice sheet sits on the coffee table, next to her knitting basket and a framed photo of a younger Grace with her late husband. Narration, slow, warm, a quiet hush in the tone. Some nights are louder than others. Not with sound, but with memory. Grace Winslow sat alone in her living room, the air thick with a kind of stillness that reminds you of who's no longer there. And yet, it wasn't loneliness tonight. It was something else. Possibility. Grace picks up the practice sheet and runs her fingers along the paper. The room is silent except for the soft ticking of a mantel clock. Grace, softly to herself. E. F. Pause. Gee. There you are. She hums as she mimics the finger positions in the air, pressing invisible keys against her lap. Music was returning to her slowly, not like a flood, but like a candle lighting one room at a time. Scene. Flashback, a warm memory from childhood. A younger Grace, around 10, stands outside a music store window, peering in at a shiny black piano. Her reflection overlays the keys. She used to press her nose to the glass of Dawson's music shop and imagine her fingers dancing across the keys. In her dreams, she was Clara Schumann, or sometimes just Miss Grace, giving recitals for her dolls lined up in the parlor. But the grown-up world didn't leave much room for make-believe. Her daddy got sick, her mama worked nights, and the piano stayed on the other side of the glass. Scene back in the present. Grace looks down at the picture frame on the end table. Her late husband, Richard, in a flannel coat, smiling at the lake. She speaks to it quietly. Grace, you always said I should try. Said it wasn't too late. Guess I finally listened. She reaches for her old reading glasses and the folder of practice sheets. Grace, with quiet determination. All right, Walter Keane. Let's see if these fingers remember how to dream. Keane montaged the next several days. Grace practices at home using a small electronic keyboard she pulls down from the closet, long forgotten. The notes are choppy, but growing steadier. Every morning after her tea, Grace played. She fumbled. She corrected. She laughed at herself. And little by little, the notes stopped sounding like mistakes. They started to sound like beginnings. Scene back at Walter's home the following Sunday. Grace arrives carrying a tin of banana bread and a scarf she knitted for him. Simple, soft blue yarn. Grace handing it over. Winter's comin'. Figured you could use this more than the birds on my porch rail. Walter, smiling, genuinely touched. I haven't had a scarf knitted for me since Lillian made one with pockets. It was hideous. But I wore it every day. Grace grinning. Hideous is in the eye of the beholder. Scene the piano room. Grace sits at the bench with more confidence. Walter stands behind her, gently coaching. Walter, try not to think so hard. The notes know where they're going. Let them take you. Grace concentrating. You make it sound like they've got minds of their own. Walter. Oh, they do. Music's stubborn. But if you listen close, it tells you everything. Grace plays a short melody from memory. Something simple but clearly practiced. Walter listens with growing admiration. Walter. That right there. That was music, Grace. Grace, surprised and beaming. I didn't mess up. Walter. Not at all. That wasn't just right. That was yours. Scene tea time again. The two sit by the window, sharing banana bread and stories. Grace. Can I ask you something, Walter? Walter. Of course. Grace. When Lillian passed, how did you keep going? I mean, really. Walter, quietly after a long pause. I didn't. Not for a while. Kept busy. Taught a few lessons. Walked the dog. Wrote letters I never mailed. But it wasn't until I started playing again, really playing, that I felt her near. Music was our language. And even now, sometimes when I hit the right note, I swear I hear her laugh. Grace softly. That's beautiful. Painful, but beautiful. Walter nodding. That's life, isn't it? Grief never really leaves. It just folds itself into the corners of our days, waiting for a song, a smell, a photograph to stir it again. But what Walter had learned, and what Grace was starting to understand, was that love doesn't vanish when people do. Changes shape, becomes melody, and when you're lucky, it finds its way back to you through the hands of a stranger. Scene that night, Grace returns home. She sits at her keyboard and begins to write her own little melody. Just 8 bars. She scribbles it down on the back of a grocery list. She hums along as she plays, hesitant but smiling. It's not polished, but it's full of heart. Grace to herself. This one's for you, Richard. And maybe for her too. Lillian. The house no longer felt quite so empty. There was music now, not perfect, not loud, but real. And every note was a reminder. She had returned a wallet. But what she got in return wasn't money or praise. It was a second chance. Friendship. Loss can silence the soul. But kindness can open it again. And sometimes all it takes to find your way back is a single. Scene: Walter's home, late morning. Light filters through lace curtains, dappling the wooden floors. The piano bench is tucked neatly into place. A new stack of beginner sheet music sits on the stand. There are moments that begin like any other. A cup of tea, a gentle hello. And end up changing something deep inside you. On this particular morning, Grace would sit at the piano as she always did. But what she would find today, hidden in plain sight, would reach far beyond any note she had ever played. Scene: Grace knocks at the door. Walter opens it slowly. His expression unusually quiet, almost somber. "Walter, you came. I wasn't sure if you'd still want to today." Grace, concerned, "Is everything all right?" Walter, gesturing inside, "Come in, Grace. There's something I want to show you. Something Lillian left behind." Scene: inside the den. The piano sits quietly, but Walter leads her past it toward a small cedar chest in the corner. It's old, worn smooth by decades of touch. The chest hadn't been opened in years. Walter said it was Lillian's, kept in the corner like a shrine to time and memory. Scene: Walter opens the chest slowly. Inside are neatly folded linens, a locket, a pressed flower. He reaches beneath a stack of music and pulls out an envelope, yellowed and delicate, addressed in swirling handwriting. "Walter," gently, "she wrote this a few months before she passed. Said it was for someone who needed it more than me. I never quite knew who that might be. Until you sat at her piano." Grace takes the letter, startled. "Grace." "Walter, I can't. This is personal." Walter, softly, "So are most things worth sharing." Grace opens the letter carefully. Her voice shakes slightly as she reads aloud. Grace, reading, "To the woman who finds her way to this bench. If you're reading this, you're sitting where I once sat. Maybe you're dreaming of music. Maybe you're trying to remember how to feel. Whatever brought you here, I believe you're meant to be. This piano holds every hope I ever had. It's where I poured joy and sorrow, where I found my voice. And if you found it too, then it's yours now. Please don't wait to live your dreams. Don't let the world quiet your song. Play, dear heart. Play." Grace wipes away a tear. Walter watches her with soft eyes. "Grace," quietly, "she sounds like she knew me." Walter, "Maybe she did. Or maybe she just knew what it was to need music." Grace walks slowly to the piano and sits. She places Lillian's letter gently on the stand, above the keys. Her fingers hover, then fall into place as she begins to play a slow, thoughtful piece, simple yet full of heart. That letter wasn't just a message. It was permission. Permission to begin again. To feel again. Play. And so Grace did. Not perfectly, not fast, but truly. Sometimes the things meant for us arrive long after we expect them. Letter. Second chance. And when they do, it's never too late to open them. Walter's home, late morning. Light filters through lace curtains, dappling the wooden floors. The piano bench is tucked neatly into place. A new stack of beginner sheet music sits on the stand. There are moments that begin like any other. A cup of tea, a gentle hello. And end up changing something deep inside you. On this particular morning, Grace would sit at the piano as she always did. But what she would find today, hidden in plain sight, would reach far beyond any note she had ever played. Grace knocks at the door. Walter opens it slowly. His expression unusually quiet, almost somber. "Walter, you came. I wasn't sure if you'd still want to today." Grace, concerned, "Is everything all right?" Walter, gesturing inside, "Come in, Grace. There's something I want to show you. Something Lillian left behind." Inside the den. The piano sits quietly, but Walter leads her past it toward a small cedar chest in the corner. It's old, worn smooth by decades of touch. The chest hadn't been opened in years. Walter said it was Lillian's, kept in the corner like a shrine to time and memory. Walter opens the chest slowly. Inside are neatly folded linens, a locket, a pressed flower. He reaches beneath a stack of music and pulls out an envelope, yellowed and delicate, addressed in swirling handwriting. Walter, gently. She wrote this a few months before she passed. Said it was for someone who needed it more than me. I never quite knew who that might be. Until you sat at her piano. Grace takes the letter, startled. Grace. Walter, I can't. This is personal. Walter, softly. So are most things worth sharing. Grace opens the letter carefully. Her voice shakes slightly as she reads aloud. Grace, reading to the woman who finds her way to this bench. If you're reading this, you're sitting where I once sat. Maybe you're dreaming of music. Maybe you're trying to remember how to feel. Whatever brought you here, I believe you're meant to be. This piano holds every hope I ever had. It's where I poured joy and sorrow, where I found my voice. And if you found it too, then it's yours now. Please don't wait to live your dreams. Don't let the world quiet your song. Play, dear heart. Play. Grace wipes away a tear. Walter watches her with soft eyes. Grace, quietly, she sounds like she knew me. Walter. Maybe she did. Or maybe she just knew what it was to need music. Grace walks slowly to the piano and sits. She places Lillian's letter gently on the stand, above the keys. Her fingers hover, then fall into place as she begins to play a slow, thoughtful piece, simple, yet full of heart. That letter wasn't just a message. It was permission. Permission to begin again. To feel again. Play. And so Grace did. Not perfectly, not fast. But truly. Sometimes the things meant for us arrive long after we expect them. Letter. Second chance. And when they do, it's never too late to open them. Grace's kitchen, morning. Steam curls from a cup of tea. The practice sheet sits nearby. Faint pencil markings added by Grace's own hand. Not all growth is seen in the mirror. Sometimes it's in the posture of your hands, the lightness in your step, the ease with which you open a door. Grace Winslow had changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply. And it all began with a bench, a key, and a friendship. At the piano room, Walter is waiting. This time, he has 2 cups of cocoa ready, and a faded binder of Lillian's old music exercises. Walter. You're ready for the next step. I thought today we'd try a duet. Grace, laughing nervous. With you. I can barely keep tempo on my own. Walter, smiling. Exactly why we should do it together. Music isn't just notes, Grace. It's trust. The two sit side by side at the piano. Walter plays the bass line, deep and rich. Grace follows with the melody, a little shaky but beautiful. Their music fills the room, tender, imperfect, and alive. Side by side, their fingers told a story that words never could. Grace felt her confidence grow with every note. Walter, for the first time in years, felt less alone. After the duet, they both laugh, genuinely, freely. Grace's eyes sparkle. She wipes a happy tear from her cheek. Grace. I haven't felt this, seen in years. Walter. That's what music does. It sees who we are before we remember it ourselves. That afternoon, Walter offers her a small gift. A simple, leather-bound notebook. Inside are blank pages and a title written in Lillian's handwriting. Melodies Yet to Be. Walter. Lillian used to write songs in here, but the last half was left empty. I think she was saving it for someone else's music. Maybe yours. Grace, overwhelmed, are you sure? Walter. Absolutely. I've heard your melody, Grace. It deserves a place to grow. The notebook wasn't just a gift. It was a home for a voice long silenced. A space waiting to be filled with all that was still to come. A rainy afternoon. Grace arrives at Walter's house with a folded umbrella and a tray of fresh-baked oatmeal cookies. Grace, cheerfully. You always play for me. Thought I'd finally return the favor. With cookies. Walter, smiling, oatmeal raisin. You're going to ruin my dinner. They laugh. Grace sets the tray down. The piano room is warm, filled with the gentle sound of raindrops tapping the window panes. Rain had a way of softening the world, of making every sound feel like it had meaning. That day, the melody they created was quiet, humble, like the moment itself. As they finish playing, Grace opens the notebook Walter gave her and begins writing something. She smiles shyly. Grace. I tried writing my first melody last night. It's not much, but it felt good to try. Walter, peeking over her shoulder, may I? Grace nods. Walter reads the small notes scribbled neatly across the staff. Then he sits beside her, quietly adding a few chords beneath her melody. Walter. There. Now it's a duet. She brought the melody. He brought the harmony. And together, they made something neither could have made alone. As the rain slows, Walter hands Grace a small cassette tape. Walter. Lillian and I recorded this years ago. One of our last duets. I think she'd want you to have it. Grace, touched. Walter, that's too precious. Walter. So are you. It wasn't about the music alone. It was about being heard. Grace had returned a wallet. But what she had really given Walter was something far rarer. A reason to keep playing. Walter's living room, early afternoon. A stack of handwritten invitations lies on the table. Grace looks up from writing them, surprised. Grace. Walter. Are you serious about this? A recital. Walter, nodding. I haven't hosted one since Lillian passed. But I think it's time. You're ready, Grace. We both are. For weeks, their music had lived in quiet corners, behind closed windows, within the folds of afternoon light. But now it was time to share it. Not for perfection, not for praise, but for connection. They begin preparing, rearranging the room, polishing the old wooden piano, placing fresh flowers in a vase by the music stand. Grace practices daily, her fingers gaining strength, her mind growing calmer with each note. Walter, watching her. I wish you could have seen yourself that first day. You were so careful, so uncertain. Now look at you. Like the notes have always been in your bones. Grace, smiling. Maybe they were. Just needed a friend to help me hear them. The day of the recital arrives. Walter's house is gently filled with townspeople. Neighbors, old friends, even a few who once took lessons from him long ago. There's warmth in the air, laughter, and the quiet hush of something meaningful about to begin. It wasn't a grand concert hall, but it held something better, heart. And when Grace stepped up to play, holding her breath with trembling hands, she wasn't just playing for them. She was playing for every version of herself who had ever been afraid to try. Grace sits at the piano. The room falls silent. She glances toward Walter, who nods from the corner. His eyes soft and full. She begins to play the melody she wrote, the one he helped finish. Each note is deliberate, tender. The crowd leans in, some wiping away quiet tears. She made mistakes. Her fingers slipped once or twice. But none of it mattered. Because the song carried her. And the room carried her. And Walter too. When she finishes, the room erupts in gentle, heartfelt applause. Grace turns, overwhelmed. Walter walks to her, offering his hand. She takes it, and they bow together. Walter, quietly, you did it. Grace, whispering, we did. After the guests leave, the two sit at the piano once more. The house is quiet again, but something has shifted. Grace opens the notebook and writes a single word beneath the music. Home. Walter, reading, that's what it's been, hasn't it? This piano. This room. You. Grace. Yes. Home I didn't know I was missing. Not every home has a roof. Some are built from notes, from kindness, from second chances. A few days after the recital, Grace arrives to find the front door of Walter's home slightly ajar. She knocks, then enters gently. Grace. Walter. It's just me. The house was still, not silent in a fearful way, but in the way that comes after something sacred has passed through. A recital. Lifetime. A memory waking up from a long, peaceful nap. Grace walks through the house. On the piano bench lies a folded note addressed to her in Walter's careful handwriting. A gentle ache rises in her chest as she opens it. Grace, reading aloud, Dear Grace. If you're reading this, I'm likely resting. Maybe just for the day, maybe longer. Don't worry. This old heart has lived through more than it ever expected. I want you to know what you've given me. When you returned my wallet, you returned something I thought I had lost for good. A reason to keep playing. A reason to listen again. A reason to share. You brought light into a house that had gotten too quiet. You gave Lillian's music a new breath. And you, Grace, are now part of that song. Grace sits at the piano, the letter trembling in her hands. She didn't cry loudly. The tears came the way music sometimes does, quietly from a place too deep for words. Days pass. Grace visits Walter in the hospital. His eyes are closed, his breath slow. She holds his hand and hums the melody they wrote together. Grace, softly. It's all still here, Walter. The music, laughter, even the cookies. We're all still here. He didn't respond. But somewhere inside she believed he heard. Because the heart knows its own language. Back at the house, Grace walks through the now quiet rooms. She opens the cedar chest again, not to find something this time, but to place something in it. Their finished duet, handwritten, tied with a ribbon. Grace, to the room, Thank you, Lillian. For the bench. For the space. For Walter. Some goodbyes are not ends. They are echoes. Notes still ringing long after the last key has been played. Scene. Grace leaves the house but keeps the key, entrusted to her now. She begins teaching a few local children to play. Laughter and music return to the room that once only held memories. The piano remembered. The walls remembered. And Grace, once unsure, once silent, remembered too. Not just how to play but how to belong. Sometimes we return what's lost. And find ourselves in the giving. Springtime. Grace stands outside Walter's home, now hers. The garden is blooming. Tulips, daffodils, and lilacs that Lillian once planted. A gentle breeze carries the scent of blossoms through the air. Seasons turned gently in the little town. And with them so did Grace. Where there had once been quiet grief, there was now a quiet joy. A steady, kind presence, like a favorite song hummed through the day. Scene, inside, the piano room has become a classroom. Children's drawings line the walls. Simple tunes echo softly during afternoon lessons. Grace now teaches 4 students, young, eager, uncertain, just like she once was. Grace, encouraging a boy at the keys. It's okay to miss a note. What matters is that you keep playing. She was passing along more than music. She was passing along trust, patience, and something deeper, the belief that it's never too late. Scene. One quiet afternoon, Grace opens a small box Walter left her. Inside is a well-worn cassette tape labeled, Lillian Home Recording, 1978. She places it in an old player and listens. A woman's voice fills the room. Gentle, graceful. Lillian. Lillian on tape softly. To whoever hears this one day. Know that love lasts. Even when we go, it stays. In laughter, in music, in the kindness we pass forward. Grace listens, tears forming, not of sadness but of quiet awe. Lillian's voice, long silent, became a harmony to Grace's days. A soft reminder. What we give in love never truly leaves. Scene. Months later, Grace hosts a community music night. Neighbors fill the living room again. She plays their duet, the one she and Walter wrote together. The room is still, held by the music. Grace, speaking before playing, this song was born from something simple. A returned wallet. But it became something far more. Friendship. Healing. A gift. As her fingers moved across the keys, the story of a lost wallet and a lonely man became something new. A song that stayed. After the music, Grace stands by the old piano. A young girl from her class comes up, holding a handmade card. Young girl. Miss Grace, I want to be just like you when I grow up. Grace, kneeling, smiling. Oh, sweetheart. Just be you. But never stop listening for the music. It's always there, even in the quiet. Sometimes the smallest choices, the kind we make without expecting anything in return, become the notes of our greatest song. In returning what was lost, she found something priceless. A home, a purpose, and a song that would never fade.